Hello and welcome to another episode of Des and Marco, the podcast listened to by mostly females.
Indeed. I'm Des, I'm not one of them.
And I'm Marco, and apparently we have very soothing voices that women seem to like.
Allegedly. We haven't seen said woman, but we like to believe.
Exactly. So, first things first, what are you drinking?
I know this is a beer choice which is going to annoy you. And it's going to annoy you not because it's bad, but because it's one of your favorite beers.
Oh no.
I have got a Blue Moon.
Oh.
I don't know what else to say other than it's the beer that you like, and I'm drinking it and not you.
Exactly. And you know nothing about it. That annoys me even more. Like, at least do some research.
I've done some research. I know a lot about this beer. So this is an American beer, but this particular one is actually brewed in the Czech Republic. Because Blue Moon was created back in the 90s, I think, by Miller Coors. So very popular in America. But in Europe, it's only been brewed here since they've taken over Staropramen, which was a beer I reviewed a few episodes ago.
All right. So you did do your research. That's good.
I did do my research. I don't know if it's going to be as good as the one in America or if I'll even notice a difference. It's the traditional Blue Moon, the Belgian white. How about you?
So I'm a little bit jealous, and as you know, because also I've been looking for Blue Moon here and I can't find it. And by can't find it, I mean it's not in my local supermarket. But anyway, so I picked a beer that was also kindly given to me by my colleagues for my birthday. It is from the Hope Brewery here in the Netherlands. I think I've had one from the brewery in the past. It's called the Anker Session Bison. So it's a Bison beer, so it's a wheat beer. And allegedly, it's a beer that was drunk by sailors back in the day. Because beer has alcohol in it, it's much more hygienic to drink than water. And I guess they didn't have that much clean water back in the day on the boats. So sailors used to drink this, and because it's pretty light in alcohol, they could drink a lot of it.
Cool. Interesting fact.
Yeah, so I won't be drunk at the end of this episode.
For once.
For once. Cool. So let's get started.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Mine is so tasty, Marco.
I bet it's delicious. Okay, that little side note. That's like my guilty pleasure every time I go to the US. It's like the first beer I always drink when I get there. It's so good. But anyway, let's get started with the news.
I saw a bit of news which reminded me of you, Marco, because if listeners aren't aware, Marco is a huge fan of the Last of Us series. I think he gave the Last of Us 2 like Game of the Year, and he was a huge fan of the first Last of Us. So the news is we already know that a TV series is going to be made of the game and the storyline or the world. We're not entirely sure of the details, but they've announced two of the actors. I know one of them quite well and the other one I don't. So there's the two main characters in the series called Joel and Ellie. Joel, who is a dude, will be played by Pedro Pascal, who is currently most famous for The Mandalorian. Well, he's got an illustrious film and TV career, but he was also in Game of Thrones and most recently in Wonder Woman 84. You know the Ellie actress, don't you?
I don't. I mean, I know who she is. They cast Bella Ramsey as Ellie, and I know she was in Game of Thrones. However, I've never actually watched Game of Thrones, so I don't know anything about her. I just know her face from...
Oh, I know who she is. She's like this really tough little lord, or lord, I don't know, female lord. I don't know what the equivalent is. In the north somewhere. So she's like badass. Okay, but she's a young actress. So like, that's like a kid.
Yeah, but Ellie is a kid. Like the character, she's in her teens, like early teens in the first game.
Oh, I thought she was like a young adult. I thought she was like...
No. But this is not the first time I hear that, like what you were just saying. So the actress, Bella Ramsey, she portrays this character in Game of Thrones where she's like super young, but also super tough. It could be a very good choice for the role of Ellie.
If I remember correctly, she's also very like Yorkshire. So I hope she can pick up an American accent or whatever, because if not, you might have a very British Last of Us.
Yeah, we should talk about bad accents in movies one day.
One day. And talking about British, this was another piece of news which interested us. So we're both car aficionados to a certain degree, and I've got an electric car and I'm quite intrigued about the whole electrification process. And Jaguar or should I say Jaguar Land Rover, has announced that they will be fully electric by 2025, which is huge news.
Yeah, so not Jaguar Land Rover, but just Jaguar. They've announced this week that by 2025, it will become an all-electric brand. Jaguar is owned by the Tata Group, and so it's an Indian group, and they've acquired them from Ford, if I'm like a few years back, if I recall correctly. They've had mixed success. They had a couple of models that came out and they were like very well reviewed and very well seen. However, the sales figures didn't really match that level of hype. So now they've made the decision to try something new and become an all-electric brand within the next few years. And I'm pretty hyped for this because, you know, it's an actual car brand. Like, it's not Tesla that started off as an electric brand. And it's not like Volkswagen having their ID line, which is, you know, they're still going to sell the Golf and the Polo and the Passat and such. So it's pretty big news. And while I was researching this, do you remember Hummers? Like the ginormous off-roaders that Arnold Schwarzenegger famously had one made for himself because it started off as a military Jeep.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, it is a military vehicle which was made for the army, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who did so many sort of military movies, actually suggested that they make a civilian version and sell it. And it was a huge success initially, but it became kind of like the poster child for bad consumption and, you know, just over the top.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it had no place in a world where fuel economy is increasingly important if your car uses fuel at all. So anyway, the brand is owned by General Motors, and they have retired it for a while after, you know, sales went down because people weren't that much interested in it. But I found out that, I think last year, they announced that Hummer will come back as an electric brand. So they made a full U-turn from gas guzzler to electric.
As did Schwarzenegger, because obviously he went from being, you know, military man, I love Hummers, you should sell these, to hug the trees and love the animals.
Yeah, that's what California does to you, I guess. And fun fact, he's also basically a vegan.
Yeah, he is now. He's done a complete U-turn from, let's say, his persona in the 80s.
Moving on, you have a big interest in cloud gaming, and I understand you're reading up about Amazon launching their own service.
Yeah, it's actually two bits of news which caught my attention in the last couple of weeks. There's several gaming services out there which rely on the cloud. So like maybe I should say streaming services or game streaming services.
Yeah.
And I think the general consensus is that this will be the future in some shape or form. So there's the big players such as Xbox and Microsoft with their offering, and PlayStation, and we'll get into that. But Google, who is traditionally not a gaming company, had released a product to compete with this called Stadia. It was heavily promoted with like their own controller. They were bundling it with a special Chromecast Ultra, and they were hoping to leverage their sort of streaming know-how to create a gaming service. And there are other options out there, such as Geforce Now and what we mentioned from Microsoft and PlayStation. As Google started up this ramp up for online gaming, out of the blue came out with this declaration that they're actually shuttering the in-house game development for Stadia specifically. So this started ringing alarm bells because Google has a history of shutting down a lot of products that it launches.
Yeah, especially messaging apps and social media.
It seems like desperate to get a successful messaging app, like desperate. So, I mean, we had like Google Hangouts, we had Google Messenger. What else did they have? Google Duo. Like, they've all failed. Literally pancake in the face. And at the same time of this news that maybe Google might be starting to falter on providing this new streaming service, Amazon have come out with the news that they've been beta testing a brand new cloud gaming service called Luna. This is currently in beta in the US, but what's intriguing is that Amazon is a company which already has stakes in the gaming and streaming universe because they own Twitch.
Yeah.
It's not entirely clear how this is going to be priced, so it's not included in Prime, but it looks like it's going to be like a $5 add-on, and then you'll be able to plug in channels from different developers. So on board from the beginning will be Ubisoft, who like make the Assassin's Creed series and other big AAA games, and the idea is you will pay an extra $15, pounds, euros a month, and play all the Ubisoft games.
Okay.
As well as their other collection. So this just got me thinking about maybe it's worth talking about what cloud gaming is, the pros and cons, what's out there, and what's likely to be the future.
Let's do it. At its core, cloud streaming, because this is what we're talking about. Basically, what it is, like now you want to play something, you're playing it on the hardware that you own. So whether it's your smartphone or it's your PlayStation or your Switch or your computer, it's local to where you are. The concept of cloud gaming is sort of like a Netflix of gaming, where the hardware where the game is running on is not where you are. It's like a centralized server owned by Google, Microsoft, whoever. And like Des hinted at, it could be the future of gaming, and there's definitely some pros and cons. The pros would be, the first off, like you don't need to buy the latest hardware. For example, you don't need to make the switch from a PlayStation 4 to a 5, or you don't need to have a computer with always the updated specs. Take, for example, a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which we love to talk about. That runs very well on very high-end hardware and doesn't run well on lower-end hardware or consoles for that matter. In this case, that's not your problem. It's whoever provides the service that provides hardware that's able to run every game. And also the games will always work. Like you don't need to worry about not having a computer powerful enough to run it. Also, you're not limited to the one device. So in the case of, let's say, Google Stadia, you can play it on your mobile, you can play it on a computer, you can play it on your TV. Like it doesn't matter which device you're using, which is actually pretty cool. Let's say I have a PlayStation. When I want to play it, I'm bound to the TV. And then also because you're streaming it, there's nothing to download. There's no installation time. Like something that like really bothers me is every time I turn on the PlayStation after a few weeks or months that I haven't played, it's like a good hour of updates. And you kind of miss the moment because by the time everything's updated, you don't want to play anymore.
I completely agree with you. I think that's one of the curses of updates in the sense that updates are good. I'm not denying that. But when we were kids, you know, you got your Nintendo cartridge, you plugged it in, you played. It was instant. Whereas now I see like with colleagues at work, you know, their children are giving them parents instructions like when you're at home, you update the game. So when I come home from school, it's ready to play. Because we know that even on a day one release, there is an update. There's like a day one update, which in my mind means the game wasn't finished.
Yeah, again, pros and cons, as in, like, the good thing is that you have a game that's always updated. Like, the game 2 years after it launched is better than the game upon release. Take No Man's Sky, for example. It was an absolute disaster when it launched. Yeah. And now it's a great game. We would not have had that, like, in the 90s with a cartridge. But the downside is there's so many downloads every time. Like, you want to, you know, have, like, a quick gaming session, and you can't. You know, you need to go for dinner first while the thing downloads.
You mentioned No Man's Sky, and I have only ever played it via an online service. And I've subscribed to Geforce Now. All these companies have slightly different business models, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
So what made me pick Geforce Now was that it predominantly plays off your Steam, Epic, and now GOG web stores. Any game you have purchased on those three platforms, you can then play on Geforce Now. And it's got its own sort of welcome window, which is essentially, you know, a browser with their own interface. You know, you've got your games there lined up, which you've linked with your account. You just click on it and then you launch the game and you play. Happy days. But not every game publisher has signed on. In the beta, everybody was on because nobody was making any money from this. It was a free service as they were trialing it. But now that it's a paid-for service, a lot of companies have pulled out, and it's mostly the big companies because they feel like they're missing out on a revenue stream.
Yeah, exactly.
But their argument is people have already purchased the game, they're just streaming it.
If you buy a game off of Steam and you change laptop, it's not bound to your old laptop. Like, you can move it. Like, here, you're just basically playing it on hardware that isn't in your living room.
Me, personally, I don't see an issue. If I was a game publisher, I'd be like, if my game is more accessible to more people, that's a win. But I guess these people think they can milk out more money by selling the game again to stream, which I think it's a concept which gamers aren't going to swallow.
Yeah, and gamers in the past have been very vocal about a few things. I still remember which was the Star Wars game, the Battlefront.
Battlefront 2, I think.
Yeah, that it was impossible to beat without paying. That's what companies want now. They want steady streams. They'll turn everything they can into a subscription.
As I said, I play No Man's Sky on Geforce Now.
Yeah.
And for me, it's only been a positive experience. There's a single caveat in the sense that I don't have fiber broadband at the moment. So my Wi-Fi for most things is absolutely fine. But for streaming games, it stutters a little bit. But when I plug it into the Ethernet cable, it's flawless.
This is the perfect use case because up until recently that you got like a high-end gaming laptop, you didn't have any proper hardware to run AAA games.
And that's why I got GeForce Now, because I thought, well, the cost of a new laptop compared to $5 a month, I would have to spend 3 years subscribing to then even get close to buying a high-end laptop.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest advantage. You don't need to worry about your hardware like somebody else. But then you also mentioned probably the biggest downside is that it's very dependent on your connection. Like if your connection isn't great, because you're not only streaming like you would a movie, it's also sending data to the cloud in the sense that every input you have on the controller, it needs to be instant. It goes to a server where the game is running, and then it goes back in the form of your character moving in the game. So from what I read, latency is still not flawless, but it's getting there. And it's very dependent on your connection.
I would agree that if you're a competitive gamer, well, let's put it this way. 99.9% of people are not competitive gamers. They might think they are, and they might play online games.
Yeah.
Latency is only an issue if you're playing seriously. If you're playing like a first-person shooter, a single-player experience, the latency that you feel in game, I would say, is almost negligible. But if you're playing competitively, it will become a factor.
Yeah, no doubt. Esports players, they don't use wireless mice because of the latency.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can imagine that streaming a game, I can imagine that being worse. You know what? Like, to me, the worst thing about this is that I don't want to have another subscription. I have plenty. I stream my music, I stream my TV, I stream my series.
I suspect there will be people who subscribe to all of these or several of these, but I agree with you. I'm kind of like, I will pick the best one.
Yeah.
They've all got different models. So we mentioned how Geforce Now charges. Actually, Geforce Now is free for everybody, but you're limited to 1 hour gaming sessions, after which you have to leave and come back in.
And from what I understand, the way it works is that basically you get onto an instance of like a gaming PC. And especially on the free tier, when you log out after 1 hour and log back in, you're in a queue. Whoever's on a paid tier, those people will get the priority over you.
Correct. I'm on the paid tier, which I said is very inexpensive at the moment. And I've never had to wait.
Okay.
But I heard when Cyberpunk was released, for example, because it was such a resource-intensive game, right, everybody was playing it on GeForce Now, and the servers were struggling, apparently. Like, people were waiting hours to play for free.
Yeah, so I guess that's one of the downsides. Like, they don't have, let's say, infinite capacity. You just kind of need to wait for your turn. And then also, I don't know about you, Des, unless it's a game like Hades where you can just go in and play for half an hour. I don't really play for less than an hour ever.
I kind of do. I might play for just half an hour, for example, in that dead time when you know you need to leave the house at a certain time, but you're like ready a little bit before. So I do a little bit, but I never play on the go.
Yeah, okay, but I guess we're slightly different gamers. Like, the games that I like to play, they tend to be like, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna stay here 6 hours, and then I'll see. No, and like we said, the main advantage of GeForce Now is that you're playing the games you already own. And basically, all it does, all you're paying for, is to have a computer like a high-end computer in the cloud.
Correct. And this differs from Google's business model. So Stadia is probably best seen as a console in the sky.
Yeah.
You're buying it for a specific platform only, and that platform is Stadia. And the problem here is that the games are very expensive, and it can only be played online. You don't have a physical copy. You can't play it on your own computer offline. You can only ever play it online via Google's Stadia service. And so people are very much saying, well, Google has a track record of shuttering a lot of services. So who's to say that I don't buy a game, I pay $60 for it, a year down the line, Google are like, this wasn't working for us. Sorry, we're closing the service now.
Yeah, and they pulled the plug. PlayStation or Sony can stop selling the PlayStation 4, but you still have it and you still keep all the games. 5 years from now, I can still play, I don't know, Last of Us on my PlayStation because it's mine. If Google decides to pull the plug on Stadia, all the money that you spend buying the games, because you have to buy them, they're gone. And from what I understand, you also need to buy the controller, like their controller.
No, you don't have to. It's compatible with other controllers.
Oh, okay.
But they designed a very low latency controller optimized for their systems, which turns out to be a pile of poop, I think.
All right, but it looks very nice.
It looks very nice, and I've been told it's a very good controller.
Yeah.
I have used Stadia, and I'll be honest, I wasn't blown away as an experience.
Okay, interesting.
But it works.
And again, it's available, from what I understand, it's available on mobile, although only recently they launched it on iOS. As we go over these services, you'll notice that iOS doesn't really play well with these things because Apple. Definitely on Android, definitely on computer. Anything that has a Chrome browser, I think, will work. So including Chromecast, which is actually pretty cool to think that like a little dongle on your TV can play AAA games.
Oh, yeah, super cool. I think the hardware Google has nailed in the sense that, their streaming know-how and the Chromecast, which means you can play it on a TV, it all works really well. But it's just that insecurity of, I don't really want to purchase the game at a premium price and not physically own it or have the rights to play it on any other platform.
Yeah, from what I understand, Amazon's business model is similar, isn't it?
Yes.
Anything that can run Amazon Prime Video will run Luna. So you can play it on a Fire Stick.
Correct. I'm interested in seeing what Amazon do because I personally think that Twitch will make a push to be more competitive in the gaming industry. So already Prime give away free games on Twitch.
Wait, really?
Yeah, Prime Gaming. And they give a set of free games every month.
Really? Is that for anyone with a Prime subscription?
Yes.
What? Okay. Give me 3 hours. I'll be right back.
I suspect that as they integrate Luna and Twitch and the Prime subscription, I suspect Amazon will start selling digital games as well as the digital services they already sell and synergize, and it will all kind of mesh together.
I'm surprised they haven't used the Twitch name, call it Twitch Luna or whatever, to make, let's say, their gaming brand, and they use the Amazon name instead.
Maybe if it becomes successful enough, they will merge them, but maybe they don't want to taint the Twitch name. If they shutter that service down, they don't want to create confusion.
Yeah, could be. But anyway, like you said, it's in beta and it's only available in the US for now. For us Europeans, we'll have to wait a bit longer. And it's going to be available on TV via Fire Stick, PC, Mac, and surprisingly iOS, but not Android, because Google and Amazon, I don't think they play well together.
Frenemies.
Exactly. But those are not the only ones. If we want to move to the more traditional gaming companies like Microsoft with their Xbox brand and Sony with the PlayStation one, they also have a sort of streaming service as well. I think PlayStation was one of the first ones because their PlayStation Now was available since, I think, 2014, 2015. And you can stream over 800 titles. However, most of them are from the PS3 era, so they're pretty old. You can download the games, which is cool because then you can play them without an internet connection. Although I guess it defeats the purpose of having a streaming service. And it's only available on PS4, PS5, and Windows. So, you can't play it on mobile from what I understand, and you can't play it on Mac or iOS. And it's just, let's say, an add-on to your PlayStation Plus subscription, which I guess a lot of PlayStation users will have. So I don't know. Reading about it, I wasn't too hyped because the idea of playing old games doesn't really excite me. It seems a step lower than the others.
I don't have a PlayStation, and I wanted to play The Last of Us because, everyone raved about it. And I did consider getting a PlayStation Now subscription because it's the only way you can play PlayStation games on the PC.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that Sony bought the PlayStation Now technology from another company. I can't remember the name of the company. I'm trying to look for it. But the original idea was, as you mentioned before, to create a Netflix for games.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Sony butchered it, but they definitely narrowed the scope to provide a way of streaming their in-house games and their in-house catalog.
Yeah, exactly. If you're nostalgic of PS2, PS3 games, then definitely go for it. The company was called Gaikai, And they bought it back in 2012 for quite a large amount, so 380 million. So you would expect them to want to make that money back. But I don't know. I haven't tried it. To be honest, I don't think I will, because the big PS3 games that I wanted to play, I played back in the day on the PS3. And same thing for the PS4. But going across the Pacific to the US, Microsoft also has their gaming service, which is a little bit more appealing because you can play a lot more games. So it's called Xcloud, and it's part of the Xbox Game Pass subscription, or at least I think it's an add-on to it. So it's available on Android, Xbox, of course, and PC. And basically, like, it's a streaming service, and I believe you don't need to buy the games. They're already there. Like you said for The Last of Us, I was tempted to do this one to play Flight Simulator, but then I got it as a gift. One neat thing that I found about it is that if you have an Xbox and you have the Game Pass, which is their subscription, and you have saved games, your save states carry across. So, like, play whatever game on it, and then you play it on the cloud, and you can start off from where you left.
PlayStation and Sony and Microsoft with Xbox, they don't want to be left behind. I think they realize that internet in general is the future of gaming. Between the Sony and Xbox, I think Microsoft product is more compelling. It's got a wider library, and it can be played on more platforms. It's not limited to old games. I just think it's a more complete product, but it's not cheap. It's a significant amount of money, which will add up quite quickly. But if you're a serious gamer, it's much cheaper than buying all these titles individually.
Depends. Depends when you buy them, let's say.
Depends when you buy them. But if you're committed to paying just whatever, $15.99 a month, a brand new AAA game will cost you upwards of $60 now.
Yeah, of course. If you buy games when they come out, then having a streaming service is probably going to save you some money. But you know what? One thing I found, and I found it especially when I bought a good gaming PC and started using Steam, I found that, like, if you have too many games, you end up playing none of them. Like, when I used to game a little bit more, I used to buy the one game, wear it out, completely destroy the CD from use, and then move on to the next one. You know, I would always have like the one game that I would play and then just move on to the following one only once I finished it. With Steam, like, every once in a while, like, you keep getting these emails, it's like an item on your wish list is on sale, and then you buy it, and then it just stays there, and then you find like you have 200 games and you don't know what to do. You just have too much choice. Like, if I had the Xbox Game Pass, I would just, like, turn it on and then not know what to play and then just quit because there's too much choice.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. You know, the Switch has a little... if you're subscribed to the Nintendo, whatever they call it, you get a pretty big library of NES and Super NES games. When I opened it the first time, I was so excited because I was like, oh, I can play the original Mario Kart. Oh, I can play Donkey Kong Country. Oh, I can play Super Mario Bros. 3. And then I'm like, I don't feel like it because there's just too many and I can't choose.
No, I know what you mean. That was a brief run through of the current and probably the biggest cloud services which will be coming up in the near future. I do have one honorable mention, and that is a French company called Shadow. And unlike the previously mentioned services, Shadow lets you run a PC in the cloud. So you're buying a PC in the cloud, like a high-end PC.
Okay.
And you can install whatever you want on it.
Oh, so not necessarily just games.
Lots of people use it for, like, Photoshop, for example, to use, like, or Adobe Premiere or whatever filmmaking software, because you're using, like, an incredibly powerful PC, but you're paying relatively little for it.
Okay.
And you can even pay per hour, I think, which is quite unique. Like, if you just need it for one project, you can say, look, I need an afternoon, and you can do that.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's interesting.
But it's not a proper gaming service, but lots of people do have the monthly subscription, put Steam on it, and then they'll just log in remotely and play whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a powerful PC, you're not bound to how you use it. Okay.
Complete change of topic here. Seeing as we've been talking about the cloud, what has recently been on my eyeballs, what I've been watching recently, is Superstore, a TV series set in a fictional supermarket called Cloud 9. And I thought, hey, we're talking about clouds, and this is ringing a few bells.
Wow, what a smooth transition.
It was terrible, okay? We'll just gloss over that.
And also, when you were saying something about currently sitting on your eyeballs, I was starting to get worried. Like, are you okay? Do you need to see an eye doctor?
No, it's okay. I'm covered.
All right, cool. Yes, I have seen it, actually. You know what I think about it? It's like the perfect, I mean, not exactly perfect, but it's a really good binging show. perfect for the quarantine that we're in, because you can kind of leave it on and not pay too much attention, and it's kind of funny. If you're watching an episode and halfway through that episode you like check your phone for like 5 minutes, you're not going to feel guilty about having missed anything.
I completely agree. I find it very charming. My significant other used to like work in a supermarket, so she relates a lot to the stories and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I think everyone, especially as a child, were kind of like, ooh, flashy superstore, tons of products. And it's just kind of cool to see like the inner workings of this corporate machine and like how do people live within this world where like they're obviously like the lowly paid workers and they have conflict with the managers and corporate, and how we sort of trickle down and trickle up. It's just charming to watch. And it's not quite brain dead TV, but it's something you can watch in the background. But there's still some very interesting characters as a show. Like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I enjoy watching it a lot. Last week we were talking about Westworld. You missed 2 seconds and you have to start the episode all over again because it's like there's so much to pay attention to. And this is just kind of like a very light show. But it's pretty funny. I think there's very good chemistry between the two main actors, America Ferrera and
that guy,
Ben Feldman.
Yes.
There's good chemistry between the two of them. The supporting characters are pretty funny. I especially love Dina. She's like the security person, I think.
Do you know who she is? She's the female Dwight.
Yes, exactly. And it does remind me of The Office because it takes place during like a working environment.
Yeah, like a fly on the wall sort of thing.
Yeah, like there's very rarely scenes that take place outside of this superstore.
Yeah, I don't think there's any actually.
Yeah, there's a couple, but they're not important, I guess. It's like a very light. I enjoy watching it. And then, like a lot of sitcoms, I think they're on season 5 or 6 now. By the time the story progresses, the show starts getting a little bit worse. But then you're hooked on the story. Because there's also, much like Friends, there's a very, like, between the two main characters, there's a very, like, will they, won't they vibe to it.
But I did hear for the very last season, America Ferrera leaves the show.
Yeah, have you seen the last season?
I haven't seen it yet, so...
Oh, okay. Then I'll not spoil anything because I've seen a few episodes about it. But it's really cool how the writers reacted to this pandemic because they really treat that topic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because it's a superstore and there's lockdown and then there's, like especially in the US where people don't really want to wear masks and stuff, they handle that really, really nicely.
Cool. So it's our recommendation and we were talking about clouds and this one is set in the fictional Cloud 9 supermarket store. I personally think it warrants a watch. Not as serious television, but probably like if you're doing the ironing or something, watch it.
Yeah, it's great for background. We're saying this, but at the same time, it sounds like we're kind of degrading it, but it's actually good.
Yeah, it's very good. It's charming, but it's not serious television.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of clouds, have you seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
I have, but that's irrelevant.
No, I haven't. I thought you didn't, so then that went well.
Okay, and on that note, Marco, how's your beer?
Well, it's not as good as yours because you have one of my favorites. But apart from that, it's very nice. It's pretty light. I get what they mean when they say that sailors used to drink this instead of water because I feel like you can drink many of these. What I don't particularly like is on the bottle, it recommends some foods that you can pair this beer with. And it says vegan burger. So 0 stars or 0 beers out of 6. It's good. It's not great, but I quite like it. Like Superstore, it's a beer that you can have in the background, let's say. Like you can keep drinking and it's reliable in that sense.
And what's your score out of 6?
I'm going to say 3. What about yours? And why exactly did you want to give it 6?
So this beer is fantastic. It tastes extra nice knowing that Marco can't enjoy it. I'm going to have to give it a 6 out of a full 6-pack. If not, this podcast ends here today.
Oh, wow. Our first 6 beer. Speaking of, we now have an Untapped account. So look us up there. Untapped is this beer social network where we review our beer, or where people review beers. So we've put up all the beers we've drunk so far with their rating. You'll see that they use this weird rating out of 5, which absolutely doesn't make sense. So we try to get as close as possible with our frankly superior rating out of 6.
That's correct. If you do go onto our beer database, we've also got our Untapped score, but it's a direct correlation of the score out of a 6-pack.
Yeah, incredibly complex math.
Yes.
on that note, you can also find us on Instagram at DesandMarco, Twitter at DesandMarco, email desandmarco@gmail.com, and I think that's it. We don't have any other accounts yet.
Yet is the key word there. Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We hoped you learned something about cloud gaming and our opinions on it, and hope to see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. See you next week.